The history of the world is often told through stories of great battles, powerful leaders, and dramatic conquests. Yet beneath every empire and legendary warrior lies something even more important than victory in war: a system. A system is the structure that holds a society together. It determines how people live, how they eat, how they resolve conflict, and how they survive in difficult times. When comparing two of history's most famous civilizations, the Romans and the Vikings, it becomes clear that their true strength did not lie solely in their weapons, but in the systems they built to support everyday life. The Roman Empire and the Viking world could not have been more different. Rome was a vast, centralized empire built on laws, cities, and infrastructure. The Vikings were seafaring peoples from the cold northern regions of Europe who relied on mobility, community, and adaptability. To determine which had the better system, it is necessary to look beyond warfare and examine how each civilization organized housing, food production, trade, law, and military life. One of the clearest contrasts between the Romans and the Vikings can be seen in how they built their homes. Roman housing reflected their belief in permanence and order. Roman cities were filled with stone buildings, paved roads, and public spaces designed to last for generations. Wealthy Romans lived in villas that included courtyards, gardens, and sometimes even advanced heating systems known as hypocausts, which circulated warm air beneath the floors. Ordinary citizens lived in apartment buildings called insulae, which allowed large populations to live within city walls. Although these buildings were sometimes crowded or unsafe, they represented Rome's focus on urban living and centralized organization. Viking housing, by contrast, was shaped by harsh geography and climate. Vikings lived in longhouses made from wood, stone, and turf, materials that were readily available in their environment. These structures were designed to conserve heat and withstand brutal winters. Inside, families lived together in a shared space around a central fire, often bringing animals indoors during the coldest months. Privacy was secondary to survival. The Viking housing system emphasized community, cooperation, and practicality rather than comfort or luxury. While Roman homes reflected wealth and permanence, Viking homes reflected resilience and adaptability. Food systems further reveal the strengths and weaknesses of each civilization. The Romans benefited from warm climates and fertile land across much of their empire. Large farms produced wheat, olives, and grapes in massive quantities, feeding millions of people. Rome's extensive trade networks allowed food to be shipped across seas to supply cities far from farmland. Roman diets included bread, fruits, vegetables, meat, and fish, and cities even featured food stalls where people could buy prepared meals. This system demonstrated impressive organization and scale, but it also depended heavily on uninterrupted supply lines. The Viking food system was far more cautious and survival-focused. Living in regions with short growing seasons and rocky soil, Vikings cultivated hardy crops such as barley and oats. They relied heavily on fishing, hunting, and livestock. Most importantly, they mastered food preservation. Fish was dried, meat was salted, and vegetables were fermented to last through long winters. This ensured that communities could survive even when fresh food was unavailable. While the Romans enjoyed variety and abundance, the Vikings ensured stability in the face of uncertainty. Trade and law further highlight the contrast between centralized and decentralized systems. The Romans built an enormous network of roads, straight, paved, and durable, that allowed goods, soldiers, and information to move quickly across the empire. A standardized currency simplified trade, and written laws provided consistency throughout Roman territory. Legal disputes were handled in courts with judges and established procedures. This system helped maintain control over a vast population and allowed Rome to function as a unified state. The Vikings lacked a centralized government, but their system was no less effective. Instead of roads, they relied on the sea. Viking longships were engineering marvels, fast, lightweight, and capable of sailing both open oceans and shallow rivers. This allowed Vikings to trade with distant regions, including the Middle East and North America. Legal matters were handled through assemblies called things, where free members of society gathered to debate laws and resolve conflicts. Decisions were made collectively rather than imposed by a central authority. Although this system lacked written records, it fostered participation and fairness within Viking communities. Military organization is often the most discussed aspect of both civilizations, yet even here, their systems revealed deeper values. The Roman military was professional and disciplined. Soldiers trained constantly and fought in organized formations, such as the famous testudo, where shields were locked together to form a protective barrier. Roman armies were designed not only to defeat enemies, but to occupy and control territory. After conquest, Romans built forts, roads, and cities, turning battlefields into provinces. Viking warfare operated under a different philosophy. Most Vikings were farmers or traders who fought when necessary. Their strength lay in speed, surprise, and adaptability. Viking raids were swift and unpredictable, often targeting poorly defended areas before disappearing just as quickly. Their ships allowed them to strike from unexpected directions, and their warriors relied heavily on personal skill and courage. While Romans excelled at long-term control, Vikings thrived in fast-moving conflicts. When comparing these two systems, it becomes clear that neither was objectively superior in all circumstances. The Roman system was designed for stability, expansion, and control. It created infrastructure, laws, and cities that influenced the modern world and allowed millions of people to live under a single authority. The Viking system, on the other hand, prioritized freedom, resilience, and adaptability. It allowed small communities to survive in extreme conditions and explore vast new territories. Ultimately, the question of who had the better system depends on what one values most. Rome demonstrated the power of organization, permanence, and scale. The Vikings demonstrated the power of flexibility, community, and survival. Both systems were highly effective within their own environments and goals. Rather than declaring a single winner, the comparison reveals an important truth: successful systems are not universal. They are shaped by geography, culture, and the challenges a society faces. In the end, Rome built a world that stood firm and endured, while the Vikings built a world that moved, adapted, and explored. Each system was a reflection of its people, and each left a lasting mark on history.